Hey guys, Dan Davis here. So one of the questions I get asked the most is, should I bulk, cut or recomp? And in this video I'm going to be pulling back the curtain on whether you qualify for the holy grail of fitness, and that is being able to lose fat and build muscle simultaneously, or recomping for short. Now you may be thinking this video is a complete and utter waste of time because logic states if you're fat or overweight you cut, and if you're skinny you simply add mass. And this is exactly what these guys thought before they started working with me. Now on the surface I agree it does look black and white, but when you factor in different genetics, body fat starting points, muscle maturity, along with decision self-doubt with the choice that you made, oh, get in! I'm looking leaner. Oh, but look at me, I'm looking skinny as That's the bulk I go. Multiply that with the conflicting information you're faced with on a daily basis, and a very simple black and white question turns into a complete mind, and in the end, you're spinning your wheels faster than Lewis Hamilton's. So for a successful physique transformation, you should first work out whether you should be adding mass, losing fat, or recomping. So in my line of work, I come across three types of guys, and for the purpose of this video, it's important you categorize yourself here as you have a clearer insight as to what approach is best to take. So first up, we have the chunky chaps. Now these guys are the ones who have a really difficult time losing body fat. To get the scale weight to budge down even just a couple of pounds, they often have to drastically slash their calories, cut out all carbs, or hit the treadmill for an hour for most nights. They tend to be pretty strong and often get very physically fit, but they're never able to get close to visible abs. Secondly, we have the skinny guy with abs. And guys like this are the exact opposite to our chunky chaps. They can pretty much eat whatever they like and not get any fatter, yet they struggle like anything to build muscle tissue. And lastly, we have the skinny fat guys. Now, skinny fat guys were dealt the worst possible hand, and I really do feel for these guys. They have literally the worst of both worlds. They store fat like our chunky chaps, but struggle to build muscle like our slim dudes. But there's hope. And now that you've categorized yourself, we'll move on to the next phase. So after spending quite some time in forums and discussions, it became apparent that people are misunderstanding the term recomp. Often people look to recomp when they're in no position to achieve recomp status. You'll only qualify to recomp if you fall into the next three categories. You're a complete newbie with no former experience lifting weights. You're coming back after a long layoff. That's whether injury or you found another interesting hobby such as chess. You're on anabolic steroids, that's the third point. Now, I could end here, but I would personally like to add another two categories to this because new research and from personal experience working with clients supports what I'm about to say. So in number 4, you may also qualify for the holy grail if you've been training for quite some time, but you've never followed a methodical, structured program. So if you're someone who trains with no real plan, now may be the perfect time to address that. And finally, you may qualify if you've been training for a while, but you don't train with enough intensity. You simply go through the motions, but you really challenge yourself. And with that, your body has no reason to change whatsoever. If you fall into any of those categories I just mentioned, I highly suggest that you make the most out of this very short window of opportunity by reaching out for help. The term bulking and cutting are better understood, where with bulking you simply add muscle and cutting means you aim to lose fat. So I won't go into these in too much detail here because they're quite self-explanatory. So now you have a better understanding at what bulking, recomping and cutting are, let me show you some client case studies. So we'll start with a skinny fat dude. Now some of these guys were convinced they should be adding muscle, whilst others thought they should be losing fat. Everything I try with a client is about making an informed, educated guess, and a lot of it does come down to trial and error. Now thankfully it usually turns out in my favour. But I personally prefer skinny fat guys and overweight guys to start with a cut, and here's why. If we refer back to what qualifies someone to recomp, skinny fat guys and overweight guys tend to fall under at least two of the two categories, and with that, they're generally in a position to recomp. There are psychological and physiological advantages of cutting first. The reason I place more emphasis on a cut with skinny fat dudes and overweight guys is because when you compare the rate of fat loss versus muscle gain, the rate of fat loss outweighs muscle gain in terms of progress. With that said, skinny fat guys will see their body change faster if losing fat is the goal, and with that, they'll more than likely stick to the plan. And with adherence being the #1 driver for changing your body, it gives them motivation to keep working away. Where if the sole purpose was to gain muscle, they'd see very little progress because gaining muscle is a very slow process, and with that they'd probably lose motivation and end up giving up. So if you're over 15% body fat with the goal of looking better aesthetically, then you have no real reason to be bulking, or at least that's my opinion. Your only goal should be to drop the excess chub and bring your body fat levels down to somewhere between the 8 and 12% mark before starting a muscle gaining phase. And that takes me nicely into nutrient partitioning. Now, due to the amount of body fat this group is usually carrying, they'll have been oversupplying their body with excess calories. Now, as a result of this, the excess supply, or calories in this case, is being stored away as body fat. Now, due to the excess body fat, they've created a problem, and that problem is where they want the food to go and where the food is actually going. Their muscle cells are already full of nutrients, and when they eat more food, it's being stored away in their fat stores. Good partitioning means the food you eat goes to the right places, usually your muscles, and poor partitioning means the majority of the food you eat gets stored as body fat. How well you partition nutrients is influenced by genetics, a healthy diet, activity, mainly through strength training, and more importantly, a healthy body fat level. So the overweight beginner and the skinny fat guy's first problem is to fix this. You need to empty out the excess supply, therefore losing fat and priming your ability to add even more muscle tissue when you transition from a recomp into a bulk. How long someone should recomp is something I'll get into later. Now, I know exactly what you're thinking. How can someone lose fat and build muscle at the same time? Because a surplus is needed to build muscle and a deficit is needed to lose fat. So in order to achieve this, someone who's recomping can actually gain muscle in a caloric deficit. And how much of a deficit is individual dependent. Now, personally, and I look to aim for anywhere between 5 to 20% max of a deficit with my clients. So if their maintenance calories are 2,000, they'd aim for anywhere between 1,900 to 1,600. And again, there is no right or wrong with this. It's totally individual dependent and trial and error. And then that takes me into a question you're probably thinking, what about macro splits? And again, personally, I find focusing on macro percentages and grams often confusing and overwhelming. I get my clients to focus on protein intake and fiber, aiming for roughly 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And I do make exceptions for leaner clients in a fat loss phase where we may bump protein up to 2.1 to 2.2 kilograms of body weight. My clients will usually aim for 8 to 12 grams of fiber for every 1,000 calories, letting carbs and fats fall based on personal preference. And what I mean by this is if someone prefers bread, shoot for a higher carb intake. If you're someone who prefers eggs and avocados, shoot for a higher fat intake. Now, of course, like with everything, there are exceptions to this due to things like insulin resistance, as people with a higher body fat percentage tend to fare better on a low carb diet, and someone with a lower body fat percentage tends to fare better with a carb focused diet. Again, there are of course exceptions, but this holds true for most. But again, it's finding what works for you through trial and error. Now, this video doesn't end there, because I've seen skinny fat guys smash their nutrition strategy to the T, yet struggle to lose fat and build muscle. So why does this happen? Well, in simple terms, there's flaws in their training approach. Often guys will stroll aimlessly around a gym, picking an empty looking exercise station, perform a few reps and move on to the next exercise. They'll repeat the same process for weeks upon end without ever challenging themselves physiologically and psychologically. Now, if this is the case with you, you're giving your body no real reason to change, and with that, your body will adapt to the stimulus and simply remain the same. As the weeks progress, you need to be applying more stimulus through following a program that allows you to progress over time. And the easiest way to explain this is you should be lifting more volume using the correct intensity, allowing your body to recover efficiently between sessions, allowing you to maintain intensity in week 12 compared to week 1. Too often guys will annihilate one muscle group, leading to soreness, and this can be counterproductive. Because with this, they'll only train a body part once a week, and And with research supporting training a muscle multiple times for the natural trainee is often superior. Now here is where things get interesting. When shooting for that lean look, with muscular arms, sculpted chest, shoulders, a visible six-pack, most guys see a routine in a magazine by one of the cover models and think, great, if I do the same as them, I'll get the same results. What the guys with the great physiques do to maintain their bodies is not what they did to achieve them in the first place. Think of building a physique like learning a language. If you're fluent in Spanish or French or German, you could probably go months on end without speaking a single word of it, or at least no more than a couple of conversations a day, and yet you'd still be able to speak it perfectly. To learn a language to that level though requires a completely different approach. You need to master the grammatical theory, you'd need to study textbooks, you even might need to hire a tutor or listen to audio lessons. And you probably want to immerse yourself in some real life conversations too. Now what I'm trying to get across here is, can you see that this is the same when it comes to getting a great physique? You simply can't do what others do and hope for the same results. You have to follow a plan that's based around your body, your genetics, and where you're currently at now. And then that takes us nicely into time frame. So how long should you recomp for? Simply put, like everything, there isn't a right or wrong answer here. But as a general rule of thumb, here's my advice. If you feel you're at a point where you no longer look skinny fat and you've dieted down to a nice base to build from, go for it and start adding muscle. If your progress has plateaued and the training is becoming quite mundane and tedious, switch up your goals. As a general rule of thumb, I like to work in a fat loss, recomp or bulking period with my clients for a minimum of 6 months, because this gives us enough time to see what's working, adapting the plan accordingly to help us move forward. Changing your goals too often won't give your body enough time to respond to what you're doing. So at the end of the video, to conclude, now this is really important, you could have the best muscle building routine, but if what you actually need to lose is to lose 20 pounds of fat to look great, then you're never ever going to get there. Similar, if you're a skinny guy and all the cardio and low carb diets in the world won't give you a great physique, even if what the world's best cover model recommends, because it isn't taking you closer to your goal. Hopefully this post has given you more clarity on what you personally should be doing, and also given you some realistic expectations of what kind of time frame to expect results in. I'll be honest, the starting point of your physique journey is never pretty, but it's also the most crucial part. Identifying what you need to do and getting to your base is going to shave off years of frustration and spinning your wheels. Before you go, please give this video a like, because not only does it stroke my ego, but it also boosts me up the algorithm and more people will see it. Subscribe to my channel too if you enjoyed the video. Many thanks, and I'll see you soon.